U.S. President Donald Trump announced the death of ISIS leader Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi over the weekend.
He is the highest-ranking terrorist leader that's been neutralized since Osama bin Laden in 2011. Here's the report.
Washington announced the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi following a raid launched by U.S. Special Forces in northwest Syria. Video shot by Turkey's state-run Anadolu agency purported to show the aftermath of the raid by U.S. Special Forces that targeted the jihadist. In a promptly set-up televised address, Trump said Baghdadi killed himself and his 3 children by detonating a suicide vest when they were cornered in a dead-end tunnel.
He died like a dog. He died like a coward. He was whimpering, screaming, and crying. And frankly, I think it's something that should be brought out so that his followers and all of these young kids that want to leave various countries, including the United States, they should see how he died.
Baghdadi was positively identified by DNA tests 15 minutes after he died. Speaking to British broadcaster Sky News, a witness said he saw 2 helicopters circling above in the lead-up to Baghdadi's death.
I opened the door of my house and saw a helicopter in front of me, no more than 15 meters in the air, and another one right behind it. They were circling around 2 kilometers. There were no shots fired at first, and then suddenly there was gunfire, and the helicopter began firing back.
Baghdadi's demise marks the end of one of the most brutally effective terrorist leaders of modern times. He commanded tens of thousands of fighters from around the world and refined a horrific ideology that survives him. But for now, the world rejoices as rubble and debris take over the site where his house once stood. The families of those killed in IS attacks can't help but feel elated now.
I am proud and happy on this day. After hearing the death of Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi, this corrupt man, this insect, this virus that spread throughout the body of not only the Arab nation, but also the Muslim nation, who distorted the image of Muslims and Islam. I am glad the militants were not right. They destroyed the country. They starved us. They killed our young men.
Now that he finally succeeded in dealing another huge blow to Islamic extremists, Trump thanked Russia, Turkey, Syria, and Iraq for their support. But at the same time, Trump blasted the European Union for failing to repatriate ISIS fighters. He then issued a threat to the EU following this.
The European nations have been a tremendous disappointment because I personally called, but my people called a lot, take your ISIS fighters, and they didn't want them. And I actually said to him, you don't take them, I'm going to drop them right on your border, and you can have fun capturing them again.
Before the fall of its leader, ISIS also lost its last foothold of territory earlier this year to US-backed and Kurdish-led forces. But Baghdadi had continued to exhort remnants of the group to carry out attacks. His death may be a major blow, but the extremist group has survived the loss of previous leaders and military setbacks going back to the aftermath of the 2003 US-led invasion of Iraq. This is why most security experts believe the world still can't let its guard down, as the Islamic State remains a threat through clandestine operations or attacks.
Leaders around the world have chimed in to the death of Baghdadi. For former UK military chief Sir Richard Lawson Barons, this is a significant moment knowing Baghdadi's place in the Islamic State. However, he says this does not in any way mark the end of ISIS.
We should be clear that ISIS is still claiming somewhere around 10 attacks a day, and most of those are in Iraq and Syria. So there may be some celebration from those opposed to ISIS, but they won't feel in any way this is over.
Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu congratulated U.S. President Donald Trump, although he agrees with Barons that the battle is far from over.
This reflects the united resolve of the free countries led by the United States to fight the forces of terror, the terror organizations and the terrorist states. This is an important milestone, but it's part of a longer battle which we must win.
Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan says the killing of Baghdadi marks a turning point in counterterrorism. He adds that the struggle against terror will eventually bring peace. French President Emmanuel Macron said Baghdadi's death is a hard blow against ISIS, but the fight continues and overcoming terrorism is their priority. But Iran's Information and Communications Minister Mohammad Javad Azari Haromi downplayed Baghdadi's death, even subtweeted Donald Trump on Twitter, saying that the U.S. just killed its own creature.
Some netizens, however, are raising their eyebrows on the issue of Baghdadi's death. And that's all because of the White House's photos. The White House released photos of U.S. President Donald Trump, along with Vice President Mike Pence and other members of the national security team. But former White House photographer Pete Souza expressed suspicion as he pointed out on Twitter that the photo was taken almost 2 hours after the reported time of the raid against Baghdadi. And netizens were quick to agree. They even dared to compare that photo to this photo of former U.S. President Barack Obama, ex-Vice President Joe Biden, and other national security officials, which shows a stark difference compared to Trump's. Souza, however, noted that the actual timeline of the raid must first be verified before making conclusions about the White House photo.